Weather for Weather Geeks, Friday evening TGIF edition. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your humble host. It's been one of those days today, and I've been talking on social media, and I even talked about it on the news some this evening. Predicting the future is hard, and some days are harder than others. Today was one of those days where we had a pretty significant forecast bust. We weren't alone. I didn't see too many forecasts out there that called for 4, 5, 6 inches worth of snow across the region today. But that is what some places got, so I posted this earlier. This is what I had for dinner this evening. Nice big helping of humble pie. Thanks to Annette in Austintown for passing along this picture of the whiteout there in Austintown. And we had some local whiteouts today. Of course, a lot of problems on the roads from time to time. And why did this happen? How did this happen? A couple of fairly basic reasons. One, the snow shower activity was stronger and farther south and east than we thought it would be. We thought that there was a chance there could be 3, 4, 5 inches up in Geauga County, Lake County, maybe parts of northern Portage County, kind of the closer to the primary snow belt. But those suckers held together, kept their full strength really all the way down into the Mahoning and Shenango valleys. And the other thing was very high ratio, snow to liquid ratio. You know, we oftentimes talk about a 10-to-1 ratio as an average, but there's certainly some exceptions to that. And this was very fluffy snow. Very, very fluffy snow can accumulate rapidly. You can get a quick inch of fluff out of very little liquid that's, in the atmosphere, pretty easily. And I knew we were in some trouble last night when I drove home and already had pretty close to an inch after 20 minutes worth of snow, maybe a half an hour worth of snow. So, it was just one of those deals, and it's going to happen sometimes, particularly in our part of the country with lake effect. We're going to have some busts sometimes. That's just the nature of the beast. We like to get them. We like to think we get them right most of the time, and we certainly do. But occasionally, especially with lake effect, we're going to have a bust. So anyway, speaking of forecasts that maybe were a little awry, here, let's quickly review the winter forecast before we go ahead to spring. This was the final winter forecast I put out right around November 1st, or just after Halloween, calling for a pretty close to average winter for us temperature-wise. Colder than the previous winter. That was the overall theme. The core of the cold temperatures is expected to be up in the northern Rockies, northern plains, warm in the southwest, warm in the southeast. That was the forecast. Here's what happened in December, January, February. Of course, the forecast started okay in December. We called for a colder December than last year, and overall maybe one of the coldest months of the winter. That actually was right. The forecast started going awry as the pattern really locked in January and February. And so a lot of warm anomalies, of course, east of the Rockies. All of the cold anomalies in the Pacific Northwest this winter. So if I had to grade our winter forecast, I would give December an A. But then January and February, January I'd say a C, February was an F. We thought February, when we put out the original forecast, we thought February would be colder than January, and the winter would be like bookends. Cold December, warmer January, cold February. Well, that didn't work out the way we wanted. So that's the way the winter forecast went. I put out the disclaimer when I did the winter forecast this year. This was a harder winter forecast than the last couple of years because we didn't have a strong signal in the Pacific. No strong El Nino. La Nina was going to be real weak. And so that made the forecast pretty tricky. And certainly we had a better forecast last year than this year. This back-to-back warm winter stretch, our warmest since the late 40s. And actually this winter ended up being slightly warmer than last winter, mostly thanks to that exceptionally warm last week of February. All right, as we look forward to the spring season, March, April, May, not seeing both in the modeling and in what we call the analogs, the years that we look back on that were similar to this year, similar atmospheric and oceanic conditions, not seeing a strong signal for a wet spring or a dry spring. So right now, we're going to say it's going to be close to average in terms of rainfall this spring, with the best chance of above average rainfall being out in the northern Rockies and northern plain states. When we look back, I showed this graphic a few weeks back, when we look back at past warm stretches in January and February, the top 20 January-February warm combos, it's very rare for them the spring to be cool. Usually after a warm January-February, the spring season is either average or warmer than average. Only a handful of times has it been colder than average. So here's our forecast, and this is based on analogs and, of course, the modeling. And we are calling for a warmer than average spring. Not to say it's going to be warm every single day, just like the winter. We had cold days this winter, and spring will be much the same. Overall, the pattern won't change much. Any cold will probably be fleeting, a day or two here and there, but overall, mild weather will continue to rule as we go into the spring season. That's what it looks like as far as the forecast goes. Now, I don't have a green thumb. My wife and I don't plant anything. We have hydrangeas. That's about it. So I'm not exactly an agriculture expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know that we live in Northeast Ohio and Northwest PA, and you don't want to go crazy planting too early, even in a mild spring, because even in mild springs, we can have a late freeze. The average date of the last freeze of the season is around May 4th here locally, but it can be late. Just 2 years ago, May 23rd, we had a freeze. We had May 19th back in 2009. Last year it was May 16th, also later than average. When we talk about a hard freeze, the kind of freeze that can really do some damage, and we define that as temperatures under 30, the average date of the last hard freeze is about April 28th. Last year it occurred on April 14th, the year before April 24th, and you can see that in 2013, May 14th, we had a hard freeze well into May back in 2013. So even though overall the pattern looks mild, you don't want to go crazy. Planting too early, even though it may be an 80-degree day in April, I'm going to start the garden or whatever. You got to be careful because of where we live and what history tells us. One thing I'm going to be watching out for this spring is an uptick in severe weather compared to the last few years. Last few years have been actually pretty quiet when it comes to severe weather season here locally. Not too many big outbreaks. This year, I think we have a better chance of seeing several severe weather outbreaks. One of the reasons, the warm water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, they're much warmer than average. And that'll help fuel as low-pressure systems come east, it'll help fuel any storms that pop up in along the border of the warm and cool air, along cold fronts. So that's something I'm going to watch out for, perhaps a more active severe weather season this year. We're actually overdue for that. We haven't had a real active season since 2012. All right, back here in the near term, real quickly, because of the snow on the ground now, and the sky's going to try to clear tonight, the wind won't go dead calm, but it'll be light. Look at what the high resolution modeling is showing for lows tonight. Now, this is probably too cold, but I don't think it's too cold by a whole lot. Notice, some single digits in the purple colors showing up in parts of Northeast Ohio. I don't think that's unrealistic. At the airport, we have 12 for our forecast tonight, but I could see where some places that have 5-6 inches of snow on the ground drop into the single digits overnight tonight. All right, let's skip that graphic, and I want to talk about the long range real quickly. This video is getting kind of long already. The European model in the medium range here actually tries to bring a pretty good cold shot down late next week. This is next Thursday, and then a kind of a reinforcing shot coming in for the weekend. This is Sunday the 12th. Now, the cold anomalies may be centered over New England, but this is kind of a battle right now that's raging amongst the modeling is, does this occur or not? Some of the other longer range modeling says, no, it'll just stay warm. So that's one thing we have, that's one challenge we have in the medium and longer range is what does mid-March have in store? I think it's going to be pretty mild overall next week. A lot of highs in the 40s and 50s next week. That's above average. It's next weekend and into the following week that there's a lot of question marks right now. Still think March is going to end up being a warmer than average month overall. Thanks for watching this extended edition of Weather for Weather Geeks tonight. I'll see you tonight on 21 News. Have a great weekend, everyone. And Weather Geeks will be back at this